If you're an entrepreneur, a marketer, you're a real estate investor, one of the biggest challenges you're going to face is actually getting in contact with brand new leads to make brand new sales. And so I had to bring on my good friend and a client, Jordan Fleming, who's the founder and chairman of Smartphone, who's got the deepest knowledge of probably anyone I've ever met in terms of not only compliance, but infrastructure and even strategies on how you can get a maximum amount of lead volume getting contacted to make more deals happen. And really, one of the biggest bottlenecks I see for a lot of entrepreneurs is being stuck by their infrastructure or even the compliance or following the rules as far as getting in contact with people. And we know the regulations are getting more and more stringent. So I had to bring in Jordan to kind of break down all of this. Uh, Open up the black box, so to speak, to give us all the secrets in terms of how do we contact more people via phone or various other contact methods. How do we get in contact with people compliantly so that our companies can scale without all of the risk? So first of all, Jordan, thanks for joining here on the retention effect. So glad to have you here.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to dive into these things today. I'm not sure if I've got black box technology, but I've got at least a decade of experience in it.
Well, we know you've got plenty of secrets. So just real quick, give us the high level. You founded Smartphone, many years ago, and by the way, it's spelled SMRT Phone, which is kind of your guys' a domain there. We're gonna have lots of links down below. We've got a free book to give everyone, so lots of cool things coming up ahead. But why did you start Smartphone in the first place, and why does it matter in this current landscape of contacting leads to make more sales?
That was both a intentional and happy accident. So we were myself and my co-founders. I have two active co-founders who I started Smartphone with, and we were all at the time of founding Smartphone. We were all building custom CRMs inside of a platform called Podio, and um, and it just so happened they were doing it. I was doing it. I had a company. They had a company, and and I'd been working on a couple different things. And one of course, the verticals that we started working with and they started working with a lot and they built a kind of a platform to deal with was the real estate investment kind of vertical. And the biggest pain point we were getting was, well, they all wanted to call and text their leads. And getting that integrated into the systems we were building inside Poda, these lead management systems, CRM systems, all these where their data was being managed and where their agents were working things, getting that actually integrated at the time just wasn't very good. It wasn't seamless. It wasn't good at all. You could do some, you could use call rail and have them email you things and it could manually you could try and max it up, but it wasn't very good. And at the time I met my co-founders, they were very technical. I was very kind of sales and marketing based and I remember Vlad saying to me, hey, we should do something together. And I said, well, I got this idea for a phone system for Podio. And he said, I can build that. And we went to soft launch it like 4 months later. And so we saw a real friction point with the customers we already had. And it was like, man, it's just not good. We could make something that is seamless. And that's probably the biggest, if there was one focus point that I think Smartphone brings for our customers, it's that seamless integration between their communication strands, like the phones, text messages, voicemails, and all that, telecoms, and their CRM. When you get all of that seamlessly working together, you've got a superpower. That is a sales superpower, a customer retention superpower, and a lead conversion superpower. And that's kind of how the journey went.
Hey, are you offering subscriptions or high ticket payment plans in your business? Well, I know for a fact the number one problem that you're going to be facing is churn or retention overall. You and no one on your team wants to be dealing with this. It's difficult, it's time consuming, and to build these systems for high retention is extremely hard. That's why we exist here at Ravato. We're a fully done for you service where we install into your existing systems. You have no changes to your product, your price points, your internal teams. There's no new hires. And we literally go out and recover failed payments, renegotiate payment plans with your customers, and even deflect hard cancellary requests. We're entirely performance based, so we don't even have anything to sell you. You literally don't pay us a penny until after we've won back some of your at-risk customers. Want to invite you to a demo with us? Get information on the link down below. Well, let's dive into kind of the ugly side first, and then we'll talk more about like how do we actually solve these problems. In your time, obviously compliance and regulations across almost every country has changed, and it seems like even just recently, I believe it was in Texas, just made some really kind of
140.
absurd new regulations. Maybe I'm gonna open up the floor for you to get as ugly about the current situation that we find ourselves in with communicating with people, non people who are not customers yet, because there's different regulations when people are already a customer. But when it's a new lead, spam is on the rise. So like, what is the depth and the darkness of the current situation that we find ourselves in when we're trying to communicate with brand new leads?
I mean, one of the challenges that you have in the US is that you have a federal infrastructure and you have a state infrastructure. And those two don't always play 100% together. And in fact, and I've talked about this before, one of my worries right now with, how they're or one of my concerns, a possibility is that with a federal infrastructure that seems to be stepping back from regulation, what that means is that states tend to step up. And that's a problem because what we want is consistency as entrepreneurs. I don't want to have to know that California's got the CCPA and I have to abide by these rules, and Texas has got SB 140 and I've got to abide by these rules, and North Carolina does this and all that. I want to have one infrastructure where I can one kind of set of rules that I can play by. And then I can learn and I can adhere to. So that's one of the concerning bits of what's happening right now. We don't know exactly where it's all going to land out because the FCC is still doing things right now, and the administration's doing things, and the states are doing things, and it's an evolving landscape. But what I would say is telecoms communication is at its heart not that hard. I think people get worried, like, well, they kind of see it as this big, huge, like, unwieldy thing. It's really not. There are some core principles that if you adhere to, you're probably going to be fine. And then you got to just know about a few things, and core principles around consent, around the amount of times you can contact someone and when you can contact them, and how you need to deal with things like the do not call registry. Those are probably 80% to 90% of what most people would have to worry about from a compliance point of view if you're not a spammer. If you're a spammer, well, chances are you're not doing any of it and you got to worry about a lot more. But if you're a genuine business wanting to communicate with leads as well as customers, just having those things in mind will get you like 90% of the way there, is the truth. And then, there are things that people don't realize. And here's some common things that I've had asked of me. One, is cold calling legal? Yes. Cold calling is absolutely legal. You just have to do it in the right way, and there are some rules around when you can call. Obviously, the do not call registry, you need to make sure you're not calling anybody on that, and you have to be careful about the technology you use, but cold calling is legal. And the other question I get most often is, can I buy a list? If I'm cold calling them, can I send them text messages? And the answer is no. You cannot. I would say at this point, the compliance barrier and for text messaging is higher than voice by far, and you cannot, as a business, send someone a text message unsolicited without their consent. Whereas you can cold call them within certain kind of boundaries and rules.
And those are primarily, I understand for, but by the way, here's what's most frustrating to me about this whole thing is I get spam texted all the time. I'm on the do
Everyone
not
says that.
call.
Everyone
I'm
tells
on
you
the,
when I say that.
it's so frustrating to me that scammers and spammers can just like destroy my phone and light it up. Just last night, I got the whole, hey, you requested to reset your Google password. Like, call this number or click this link or whatever. And it's like the link looks really real. I can see that they're probably pretty proficient
Older
at
people
scamming
and
people.
less technologically inclined people fall for those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that's terrifying for like my family members who like might not have any idea, and like even me, I get that little heart palpitation. It's like, oh no, someone's trying to get into my Gmail, and then you go check it out, and it's like, wait, no, nothing's happening. Like, did they get my password? Did they get into my like last pass or whatever it was? Um, it's like it's kind of a terrifying landscape, and so it's made the good guys be framed as the bad guys, where the bad guys still get away with all this junk, which is like super frustrating. But like, if you were to lay out So we can't do text messaging to cold list. We just can't do that. That is an opt-in methodology. But for cold calling, what are some of like those guidelines, especially as it relates to like, do people need to be on an auto dialer or like a more registered, compliant platform like smartphone in order to do this, or could I literally pick up my cell phone within the business hours and cold call people directly? Or is there what other compliance concerns do we need to think about?
That's actually probably more compliant if you do it by your cell phone. So here's a couple things I'd say. Number one, so with cold calling, look, the first thing you should absolutely do is if you're buying lists and cold calling people, then you should absolutely 100% scrub your list against the do not call registry and the known litigators registries. And you should do that regularly, and you should do it again and again. And you shouldn't just do it once and then think that list is good for the next 3 months, because that's bad and that's bad practice. So the do not call list, you've got the National Do Not Call Registry, which people can put themselves on. And if you call people who are on that list, they can make a complaint for you, and those fines are usually $1,500 per hit. So every call you
It's a
make,
TCPA violation.
it's a TCPA violation, and there you go. So that's number one, the DNC list. The second is that if you are cold calling, you actually cannot call with what's called an autodialer, which is an autodialer is where you just go, you can't legally call with an autodialer that just has no interaction from an agent to dial people. And you have to initiate the call sessions, and smartphone works in both of those ways. Actually, you can set it on either side of those. But a system like Smart Dialer, which is our power dialer, gives you all the options to customize, because there's another part of this, which is behavior that you're exhibiting to the carriers. So when I try and talk to people about compliance, I say, look, there are two halves of compliance. One is the actual compliance bit, the laws, the fines, and all that. And that's bad, and you need to focus on. But there's a second part, which is the behavior you're exhibiting, which the carriers are then watching. And the carriers in this case, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, the people who control the keys to the mobile and the home phone and the business phone kingdoms, um, they are monitoring for behavior. And so if you are buying a cheap list and you are stacking up and dialing 10 people at once, and a whole bunch of those numbers are disconnects and, they see that behavior and they start throttling your phone numbers. They start It starts impact. So there's a performance side of compliance, and there's a legal and risk side of compliance. Both are equally important, but from a day-to-day, I would say the performance is the one that's most likely to impact your ability to sell properly. And there are things you can do, like, I always tell people there's no reason you need to be dialing 5, 6, 7 people at once. You should be dialing 2, maximum 3. You need to, because the truth of the matter is, you may think you're doing a great job by just piling tons of data and throwing it at the wall, but the more strategic you are and the more your behavior is measured, the less likely you're going to raise your head and the carriers are going to go whack, like a whack-a-mole carnival game. So those are the two sides of that. And I think it's important people think about both of those sides, because the performance is going to drop you revenue and the legal is going to hit you with fines.
And so obviously platforms like yours, I'm assuming sync up. Do they sync up with the do not call list, or is that like a manual? Like, how do we ensure that we get to sleep at night when we're using a power dialer and we're trying to outreach to as many leads as possible? How much responsibility would a platform like yours have as far as carrying that weight versus a user on the platform?
Technically, we have none. It's your job. Now, that said, in some of our new plans and some of the things that we're building, because we've already got the ability, you can upload a list inside a smartphone and you can scrub it against the do not call, no problem. We are looking at upgrades over the next 6 months where you can subscribe to a monthly plan, which will just every time will just check the numbers, and flag them for you. That's a kind of a more monthly plan type thing. It's technically your responsibility to, you're making the calls. You need to make sure that you are scrubbing your lists appropriately, both to DNC and to known litigators, because those known litigators, those are people who basically put their numbers in play just to trap you. And then they come at
Ah,
you. Oh, yeah. I get you get it all the time. I mean, they'll they're basically TCPA lawyers who are waiting for you, or complainants who are waiting for you to call so that they can hit you and say, "Ha, I'm gonna sue you, or you can pay me $5,000 and settle right now."
jeez.
Called known litigators. And there are, like, if you search for known litigators, you'll see there's a couple people in there, their names stick out. And these people basically make their living trying to trap businesses like that.
How do we know who the known litigators? Is there a public list of those?
There's a no You can scrub against the known litigators. So usually, when you scrub your DNC, you'll have the option to scrub the known litigators list, and that list is ever evolving as they find numbers for them, they'll put them on those lists.
And that's effectively people who have put themselves on the do not call, but they'll somehow still sneak in through that?
No,
Like, it's
they
is
no,
that the
they'll
same list?
put themselves on the do not call list, hoping you call them so
Right.
that they can whack you, right? Most people on the do not call lists, they'll just go, "Hey, I'm on the do not call, don't call me again," and they'll forget about it. These guys are waiting for you to call so that they can hit you.
And then how often is that happening? Like, these it's like their whole business model is just
This is their business model. They are waiting. They are
holy
basically
cow.
professional litigants who are waiting to trap people. It's deeply annoying, and it's a sort of sad existence in my opinion. But they do it, and which is why, it's not that hard to skip to um do a scrub of your numbers. Like, it's not that hard. It costs a little money, but it's easier than getting I mean, I had a customer a little while back, and they were telling me about the $90,000 fine they just got, and they paid.
Jeez, that is okay, so lesson number 1, do not text ever anyone who has not opted into a text message option. If they've not opted in, do not text a lead.
There
We're gonna
is
talk
one
about, I think
wait, there
go
is
ahead.
one exception. I'm gonna give you this, guys, to you listening. It's something that almost nobody knows. It's called an existing business relationship. So if you are, obviously, in order to text someone, you need to have their consent, and the best consent you can get is where they've actively checked, right? Verbal consent's okay if they say, "Yeah, you can text me," and you record it and you track it. It's not great, but it's okay. But an existing business relationship is something everybody needs to know about, and that's basically provides you a window of time where you are allowed to communicate with someone, even if they're on the DNC list, by text or call. And that is where you have a reasonable intent to do business. And so, if, for instance, if you've cold called someone and you talk to them and then they call you back or whatever, they leave a message and they call you back, them calling you back opens up a reasonable EBR, and the EBR normally lasts for about 90 days. So it's something that everybody should know about.
And if they let's get kind of fringe here because again, I don't even know like who's going to get to this point in the conversation and be as riveted as I am about this because like we're doing outbound calls on our side as well, but it's like if someone engages in that conversation with you and they don't just say hey never call me again, if they actually talk back with you and you're starting to talk numbers and starting to share like maybe next steps, does that
There's a reasonable intent to
substantiate
do
that?
business there. There's a
Yeah, okay.
reasonable, and the key is you have to be able to demonstrate that. And it starts a clock, and that clock usually, unless they've bought something from you, that clock is usually a 90-day one. It does vary state to state a little, so you got to check, but for normal it's 90 days. If they've bought something from you, purchase a service, you've got a usually 18 months where you can legitimately go back to that person. So say you have a customer, Jodo, who churns. I know you guys don't have any churn, I don't think, but one day you may. And you have a legitimate capability of interacting with them for 18 months.
Okay, so and again, I'm making mental notes here. Don't text people cold, especially if they're on the DNC list. Scrub all of your outbound phone calls against the DNC to ensure that that you're not contacting those people. Be careful for the litigant types. Seems like there's kind of a lot of landmines in this in this exercise, but you do have 90 days after someone has established some intent to do business, or 18 months after they've already made a transaction with you. Um, but even beyond that, what other elements or landmines do you guys kind of come up against when, say, for example, one of those litigants, or like TCPA violations, or like maybe we're going into Europe and there's GDPR and lots of other uh, like rules to need to follow. What else do we need to be aware of?
I mean, look, there are tons of them, but here's the thing see most often as a problem, and this is when your CRM when your database is cluttered, you're much more at risk for having duplicate data in your systems. So then, and if you have duplicate data in your system, say, imagine you've got a lead that's in your system 4 times, right? Um, an agent calls them and they say, "Don't call me again. I'm not interested. Don't call me again." That agent legitimately clicks the do not call button on smartphone if they're using smartphone, and there you go. But they're in your system 4 times. So somebody else calls them the next day. I thought I told you guys take me off your list, right? Like they're using a power dialer and they're in 5 times, and 3 different agents power dial them 8 times in a single day from 4 different records. That's super easy to do. It happens a lot more than you like. I see it all the time. It's one of the reasons why I promote good data as being foundational to this, because good data doesn't just give you the best data for your leads, but it also gives you the best data to avoid those type of risky situations where, and in my book, I talk about a story of a woman who's in, she's in 4 times and 5 different agents dialed her 9 times in the day, and not only is it a compliance risk, but you've lost that lead. She's pissed at you. You look like an idiot. She's angry with you. You're never winning her trust back. Um, so I would say behavioral challenges are some of the biggest ones where people are just like, what happens if I call this person? Yes, they've asked me not to call, but I'm just going to keep calling them. Well, that's stupid. It's stupid, and it's illegal. And if you do it, then the chances of them reporting you and you getting whacked with a fine, or worse, by the way, I have, every year I get probably, as the sort of leader of smartphone, I get the subpoenas that I have to deal with. And so every year we will get subpoenaed, a dozen or so times, averages out to just around once a month. And some of them are from the attorneys general of a state looking to go after a company to prosecute a company. So like these are if someone says don't call me again, take them off the list. It's
Is
not worth
there
the
is
risk.
there any difference between like calling business numbers separate from consumer numbers?
Yes. Absolutely. Consumer is the highest bar of compliance, 100%. And to be honest, most of what I've told you today is about the business to consumer, because that's our customer base. Most of our customers are calling consumers. They're not calling businesses. There is absolutely a different threshold for business. And there's also a lot more leeway because, if they've got published phone numbers that are on their websites, etc., you have a lot more leeway of what you can and cannot do. But it does vary per state as well, so it's important that everybody just takes a look at who are they calling and what does my state say as well.
So I can imagine someone watching this it's the person who's never done any kind of
Who thinks I don't
outbound
want to talk to
dialing.
Jordan ever again?
Yeah, they're like, this sounds terrifying. I'm never calling another person, including my own family, because they're gonna be on the DNC and they're gonna sue me. But like, what is like the minimum viable foundation for someone's like, I still really want to call, let's do the consumer. Like, how do we make sure without too much tech overwhelm, without like tons of compliant concerns or like even buying lists, what is the minimum viable foundation for someone who's never done dialing before? I obviously like getting a system like smartphone just to ensure that you're marking people as do not contact, or keeping your list and your data clean is going to help speed up the process and whatnot. But what are like the minimum viable three maybe pillars or steps someone should be thinking about when they've never done dialing, and it's like, do these three or four things and you're going to be on the right track to at least start.
Absolutely. And that's easy. Number one is data. That is, keep your data clean, buy good data, and scrub your data. So number one is data. Buy it good, scrub it, keep it clean. Number two is have a system to organize all of this, a good CRM system to organize all of this so that you can make sure that you know the history with a lead. And if they ask you to not talk, or if you've talked about something, that you'll remember it and you can mention it again, and it helps to build relationships. Easy and simple. And number three is making sure that your phone system is 100% connected with that CRM. And that you're able to manage all your telephone compliance requirements through that phone system as well. And now, selfishly, I'm going to tell you that smartphone does all of that. But of course, we're not the only ones that do, but we're the best, in my view. But those are really the three pillars, because if you've got good data that you're actively thinking about, and not just don't think of your data like I'm just gonna buy it and it's like I'm buying it and there you go. You should be thinking about your data as a strategic asset that you're serious about. It's not just like, oh, I can buy those 5,000 people. Great. Think about it and treat it respectfully, organize it properly, and track all your communications properly, and you will be a long way to being working compliantly and to having the best lead closing system out.
Man, there's so much more depth that we could talk about at scale, but I know that in your book, Click Call Scale, you break down a bunch of strategies and how people can actually get started in this, especially if it sounds especially terrifying. And frankly, if someone wants to avoid $5,000 litigants who are going to try to sue you and they're just literally waiting there to snipe you from the trees, maybe having a tool in some of these strategies would be a wise investment, to spend a couple $100 a month or whatever it ends up being for a system that can support you, or even a free book in this case that can help you kick off to the right on the right track. So we're going to put links down below, but give us a little bump on your book. What do people learn from that? And who's like the perfect fit person that needs to read Click Call Scale?
Well, the book's called Click Call Scale, The Real Estate Investor's Ultimate Phone System Playbook, but it should also be called The Salesperson's Ultimate Phone System Playbook, because although most of the stories are around real estate, because that is its primary audience, is why I wrote it, the book's not, compliance is one section. The rest is about how do you maximize your phone system. And the phone is still the best way of getting in touch with people. It's still the best way of getting into someone's life. And so, how do you build a team? How do you train people? How do you keep their performance to the quality that you want? What metrics do you track in order to do that, right? How do you create a text message relationship that's going to keep to build that follow-up? Because the follow-up, most sales don't happen in the first communication, they happen on the 10th or 11th or 12th. There's a lot to building a good communication strategy, going from, how you set your data up, to how you train your agents, to how you understand how to reach out cold, to how you build long-term relationships. And all of that is broken down in the book in separate sections and chapters with with checklists of what you need to be thinking about as well. Because I've done this now for 12 years. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of people working with hundreds of real estate investment companies across the US, as well as companies of all stripes, accountants and field operations and solar and home services and roofing and all that. And really to understand what are the building blocks of what makes a great outbound telecom strategy work, and how do you build that training and skill sets into yourself and to your the people, your agents and your representatives.
This has been astoundingly deep and also as terrifying a conversation I think I've ever had on this podcast. And so I think everyone needs to tune into this because this is critical stuff. But I do want to ask you kind of one last question as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you've grown an incredibly successful brand. You've written books, you've done a lot. What's your advice to maybe younger or up and coming entrepreneurs? If you had 30 seconds to give them the last piece of advice you ever could, what would you share with them to inspire them, to encourage them, help them to avoid any you know speed bumps along the way? We've covered a lot in this conversation. What's your advice to new and up and coming entrepreneurs?
If you're an up and coming entrepreneur, my only real advice is if the shot's there, take it. Hesitancy kills entrepreneurship. I see people who have big dreams fail because they're not willing to take the shot when the shot's there. They don't have the risk in them. If the shot is there, you take the shot. You do not hesitate. You pull the trigger. And that's something that I think that separates, in my mind, that's one of the things that separates the people who talk a big game and the people who build a big game, is that when the shot's there, they take a shot.
Avoiding that, I always say, embrace uncertainty, but reject doubt. Doubt will keep you frozen. Uncertainty, you might not know if you're going to make it, but you can at least still take the leading indicator and take that shot. Great advice there, Jordan. And it's always so weird to interview someone with the same name because I feel like I'm talking to myself a little bit too. So this is the Jordan and Jordan podcast here. Thank you so much for diving in, guys. We got a bunch of links and information down below on how to get a hold of Jordan, to get in touch with Smartphone, to get your own free copy, by the way, of Click, Call, Scale. Grab a free copy of that, read it, study it diligently, and especially for those who are doing any kind of outbound, especially to consumers, check in on these things. Make sure you're checking the DNC. Make sure you're checking for like existing litigants and understand these rules about existing business relationships so that you know the timeline for when you can contact people to avoid some of these pitfalls that could end up being extraordinarily expensive. Jordan, thank you so much for being here. So proud to have you as a friend and a client here at Rivado. We're excited for our bright future together. And we'll see all of you guys on the very next episode of Retention Effect.
Thanks, Joe.